Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of K9s Talking Sense. I'm your host, Cameron Ford. And on this episode, I wanted to get into a very unique detection dog discipline. And this discipline is happening now in the UK. And before I get much deeper into that, I want to introduce my guest who's been kind of spearheading this and getting this growing. And that is Brian Mintz. Thank you, Brian, for taking the time to hop on here and tell us about knife detection.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. So, where to start with this?
Well, let's just start with your. Tell me your background, kind of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, my background, I've always been involved around dogs. Primarily in the early days around gun dogs and gun dog training. Detection work is relatively new to me, maybe in the last 4 or 5 years. Qualified as a EDD handler in the private sector. And then it was a little over 2.5 years ago or something, looking at different disciplines, looking at the training techniques that were currently being used and looking to see whether there was anything different that could be done. Knife crime in the UK is out of control. It's an epidemic. It's really, really bad. And I always had in the back of my mind, even going back years when I was training gun dogs, that those dogs were capable of more. So I looked again, revisited the idea of training dogs to find knives. Knew very little about it, to be honest. Kind of knew that, the starting point for the whole knife detection dog project is a non-starter if you accept the knowledge that's out there, because, as you know, the knife itself isn't volatile. It doesn't give off an odor. So really that should have been the start of the project and the end of the project. Where we went from there was the thought process into what is the commonality. And the commonality for a knife to be dangerous is the human contact. A knife that hasn't been touched by a human isn't dangerous, isn't going to cause anybody any harm. Obviously, it's not good enough to do an article search, and it doesn't work, obviously, just to do human odor to search if you're going to be searching a crowd. So we looked further into, is there a interaction? Is there something traceable between the contact of a human and a knife, which is unique to that interaction? The thought process was really it was kind of bizarre. So my thinking at the time was, if it's got a taste, it's probably got a smell. Now, I'm no scientist. I'm not, that was just a hunch I had at the time. And
sure.
The thought process was, if you're handling coins in your pocket and for whatever reason you stick your fingers in your mouth, you're going to get that nasty taste. And it's a metallic taste. And we've been told it's a metallic taste. And we think of that in that way. And likewise, if you're drinking pop soda out of a can or a beer, there's lots of people don't like that because of the metallic taste. But how can we have a metallic taste if the steel itself isn't volatile? So that's led us down the path of saying there's got to be some kind of interaction there. We looked into research that had been done years ago on a similar kind of area where scientists had looked into why some water supplies, domestic water supplies, tasted metallic. And again, it was the whole kind of the hunch of if it's got a taste, it's got a smell, probably. And then as we looked more into it, we found that there is a specific reaction at a molecular level where the skin's constantly breaking down and rejuvenating. It breaks down differently, we found, depending on what it's touching. Okay. So the breakdown of certain skin cells creates an odor. We were able to identify what that odor was, and that's what we used to imprint the dogs. So the dog isn't specifically looking for the knife, it's looking for the interaction.
And how is that different than like me touching a spoon or a screwdriver or a socket set? What makes it different?
So that was the interesting part, because to be honest, in the outset, even when we got to that stage, the best we hoped for or the best we expected was a metal detection dog, which we still thought would have uses. But what surprised us really was when we started the imprinting process, the dogs were hitting on metal objects straight away. When we introduced different distractors, different metal objects, the commonly carried objects like keys, coins, etc., just by positively reinforcing the dog's response on the knife, it quickly learned to dismiss the others. This is where kind of Paola and Texas Tech came in and they were brilliant. They've been brilliant throughout, to be honest. We couldn't have gotten where we are without them. But our hunches and theories, which were played out by the dogs and reinforced by the dogs' reactions, were also confirmed by headspace analysis that Paola carried out. So there is a different traceable order coming from, for example, from keys than there is from a knife. And that was the groundbreaking, really, science that supports the work that we've been doing to that point.
What is the difference? I mean, obviously, because edged weapons can be obviously some different kinds of metals.
Yeah.
What do you know what it was that was specific about that made that reaction different to a knife compared to the other metal things?
Yeah, we do. It's so to be honest, I'm no scientist, like I say, and it's when Paola speaks, I'm kind of gobsmacked, starstruck.
It's the same thing I do when she does gun stuff with me. So
yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to try and explain in a scientific way, but there is a difference, detectable difference. This was proven by the dogs already. But what really made us happy about the point that we were getting to was Paola was able to detect the differences by the headspace analysis, and it's basically the same compounds, but in a different ratio. So again, I think we're still underestimating what the dogs are capable of, and it's more about finding ways to communicate with the dogs rather than the phrase or the attitude where we are teaching the dog an order. We're not teaching the dog any order. That's part of their life. But we've just kind of found a way to ask the dog in a way that it understands to point out this specific order that we're looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I understand it correctly, basically you guys, like you said, you had the theory. I have a theory that we can train dogs to find knives. Once you linked up with Dr. Tiedmann, she then did various chemical analysis of metals, like you said, keys, coins, etc. And when it came to the knives, the edged weapons, she was able to isolate a difference there, chemically, odor-wise. And then I'm guessing at that point, that's when you guys are able to go, okay, these are the training aids we're going to use, this unique chemical signature that happens to be unique to the knife aspect. And once you had that, how did you guys, what was your process to begin training this?
So the dogs actually done a lot of the work for us, and the science came later, if you like, after we already had the results with the dogs. We wanted kind of that validation, that reassurance that we weren't missing something, that we weren't reading something wrong. So if we go back to the starting point in that the knife isn't volatile, doesn't give off an odor. For all it doesn't give off an odor of its own, it's actually really good at holding an odor. So to present a knife and expect a dog to understand what we want out of that search just wouldn't work. So in the complicated picture of the knife, which is holding many odors, we had to be very specific about what we're asking the dog to find. And again, that's the only way the dog can find the one person in 100 that's been in contact with a knife or who's carrying the knife. So I think, to be honest, there's still a long way to go on the science part of this to fully understand it and to support the work that the dogs are doing and the results that the dogs are achieving. But I think what we've achieved so far is this chemical we use to imprint the dogs is basically saying, yeah, we want you to go out and look for this. And this chemical that we're using to imprint is a broad brush, and it's going to give you the result of a dog that will find metals. And it's only when you go to the next stage and you give it distractions, other metallic distractions, and by positive reinforcement, it can go time and time again and find the edged weapon. So it understands the difference in the order better than we do, I think, at this stage.
That makes sense, because similar in nature, doing electronic media dogs, that's where there was a very similar thing, Wild West mentality. We didn't know what we don't know. We had different subject matter expert groups within the United States that were training on it, on different beliefs. And kind of what you're saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what you guys kind of learned through doing it was, if I teach the dog to find an edged weapon, it'll start finding the edged weapon. It'll start finding the knife.
Yeah.
And I show it other metal things. And even though in the early stages, as it's learning to generalize better, it learns that these things aren't correct, but this one is. And that would, I guess, go from things like razor blades to some of the more elaborate knives to, let's say, a home kitchen utensil knife that someone's probably sharpened even further.
Yeah.
And it's basically through more and more data that you show the dog, data meaning, or I say inputs that you're showing the dog, like this is correct, this is incorrect. It's kind of like the joke I make recently. It's more like AI. The more you give it information, it starts getting better about what it is versus like weird stuff. And dogs are kind of similar. In the beginning, you'll get like all kinds of things until you give them more and more input of this is correct and desired and this is not. And that makes sense. And again, kind of like you're saying, I feel it because it's the same just in this other discipline that I'm doing a lot more of. There's still lots to be learned, Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good analogy because, to be honest, I struggle to explain to people how it's working because the dogs are teaching us all of the time.
Yeah.
And where I think that the thing we understand better about the communication is we have to be very specific in the early days, and then we have to let the dog broaden its own horizons and learn what's right and what's wrong and what we're looking for and what is very, very similar, but not quite what we're looking for, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know why this makes sense now, but I compare to, the games we play when we're kids, when we play and spot the difference, and we've got the cards and they're very, very similar, and you've got to spot the difference. Well, the way I kind of get it in my head is if you imagine 100 cards in a room and they're all almost identical, and you ask the dog to go or you ask one of us to go and find the odd one out, you can't. Or you'll be there all day, or you'll be there all week. But if you tell them, go and find the one that has a little red rose amongst it, you give them the information to go and search for it.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's because, and I'll give you the example. Obviously in the dog world, we'll get sometimes very super specific about a chemical, and we're like, it's this chemical, and if we train on this chemical only, it'll mean the dog will always tell me where this chemical exists. Well, there is some truth to that, but then there's also the uniqueness of the target, whatever it is, again, I'll just use it can be both firearm or electronics media, the ones I'm most familiar with. And with firearms, the thought process in the early days and for a lot of years was train the dogs on black powder, smokeless powder, oils, solvents, all these things. And then later on, again, through the research I got to do with Paola myself, we actually learned it's human odor and the gunshot residue. Yeah. And gunshot residue is broken into a lot of its own chemicals. And there'll be a lot of people going, well, I'll just train on the dimethylene or dimethyl. I can't even pronounce it, but there's one chemical there that I'm getting tongue tied on that exists and it's true and it's a higher chemical in the headspace, but it's also in a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
And what we really learned was train the dog to find the gun. And in this case, or the gun parts where you've obviously fired it. So what we also learned in that process was starting off with a freshly fired firearm was more problematic because it smelled so strong. And a lot of times weapons are in all different states since they've been fired. Mm. And when people are carrying them on them or they're trying to get it through nefarious means, it's gonna basically throttle it down. So the amount of odor available won't be as strong. So the next dogs we did after the first dogs we did was go down to start off with a much smaller amount of, in this case, GSR and the human scent.
Yeah. So, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I can relate to that. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. So I think in that respect, you're giving the dog this big, complicated picture and allowing the dog to narrow it down.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because the oils are still going to be there, but what they start realizing, just like you said, it's the whole odor picture. For this case, the gun. It's all the things, not the things out singular wise.
Yeah.
And we as humans, in the way when you get dog trainers and trying to think like scientists, we're like, ooh, we want to train on this chemical. And again, there actually could be truths to that. But as we've learned, and I'll give the other example on the electronic media, the main chemical that's a soldering kind of agent, is lack of a better description, is like a glue, called TPPO. And that had kind of been the holy grail for the longest time. Then the Dutch police and others have done some research and found out, well, yeah, but not as much as you think it is. And though it is the chemical there, it's not the strongest smelling chemical.
Yeah.
And then it turned into a couple other ones. And then as I've done more and more of these dogs, I just train them to find what I want them to find. I put out SD cards, I put out micro SD cards, I put out thumb drives, and I let them find that. Even for like my newest dog right now, I trained him on those and those only all the time, and he crushes it. Because what we did learn though in that process was devices that had not had data put on them did not smell the same as devices like the SD cards or thumb drives. When you put data on them from the computer or whatever it is, it does change how it smells because the heat sinks and it creates. So we learned a lesson there was you just can't go grab one out of the store, open a package up, and expect that picture looks like what the operational picture will look like.
Yeah.
I'm assuming this is probably similar to knives, or for you guys that's kind of how it, as you're describing it, and I'm understanding it, is you say you show them. Now let me ask you this: do you start them on just a knife as it is, or do you guys go to a chemical?
No, this is where it's different, and this is where people kind of doubted what we were doing and find it hard to understand. I fully appreciate what you're saying about the digital media, but this has got to be the opposite. This has got to be the other way around.
Okay.
And it doesn't work any other way. You can't imprint the dog on a knife. It just doesn't work. You've got to learn the dog this interaction, because that's the only commonality amongst these metal objects, whether it be a knife or a coin. And like you say, you can fine tune it later on, but it's got to be the chemical first, and then the dog will work out the commonality between the chemical that we're imprinting on and the metal object, i.e. the knife. So once we've got the dog imprinted on the chemical, we transition onto the edged weapon, and we take that chemical away, and we never reintroduce that.
Gotcha.
Because all we're doing is giving the dog a head start, saying this is the interaction we're looking for.
The link between here to here.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes actually good sense to me, because like the things I said a second ago, firearms are a profile, like a full profile.
Yeah. Whereas this is quite a unique small part of that big picture.
Yep. Especially being that's what makes it unique for knives versus other things. That does absolutely make sense to me, that you would need to teach them that here's this unique thing. Yeah. Okay. This unique thing will also be on this kind of substrate and this kind of substrate, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. What's interesting as well is I think it's transferable as well, because we've spoke about it, although we haven't looked into it and tried the dogs or done the research behind it. But it kind of makes sense that the natural progression to this is when we talk about firearms, there's no reason why we can't get the dog to find a clean part of a firearm without the traditional imprinting methods, as long as it's been touched by a human. Because we could use the same process to say, whereas we could have went down when we're bringing distractions in, for whatever reason, we could have said, no, we don't want you to find the knives, we want you to find the coins. If you put that row of metallic objects, you could introduce any metallic object into that row and say, no, it's not those. It's only this one. It's only this one. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that clears it up. That makes it make sense really well. And super cool in the fact that, started off as an idea and there was truth to the idea, and then the science backed up what you guys were seeing with dogs.
Yeah.
In this process, I mean, other than probably the beginning, what has been some of the hardest aspects of training the dogs for this? Because obviously, if I have a person and I want to get the knife past something, I mean, like I said, I've been to the UK. Last time was a little over a year ago. And, as I walked around, I saw the different canisters that are around town where you can drop your knives into, turn these things in. But I mean, that's a lot of varieties and a lot of ways to deal with it. But when you go to an event, like for you guys, a football match, before you get to the pitch and all the places around it, don't they have the metal detectors and all the things that would be useful for that? Now, I get that, knowing that you guys also have your passive screening dogs for explosives and pyro and a bunch of other things. Is that kind of, even though that these metal detectors exist and they should pick up on the knife, you guys are there as an addition to that, or is this a different kind of usage for you guys?
The most difficult, the greatest difficulties we've had from the start with this was changing people's ideas and acceptance of something new. Without calling my own country names, they're very slow to take anything on that's new. And people are set in their ways. Yeah. And what was refreshing was when I first discussed this with Paola, because it was a theory and we weren't making any claims that we couldn't substantiate. She was on board from day one. Even now, even though we've demonstrated with people who have been asked not to name, but the chief scientific office for our country, for our government, and the chief police officers for our country, demonstrated and done trials with and worked with and had results with this, we still have pushback. So that's been the greatest difficulty. When it comes, once we got the process down, the actual imprinting and training process is no different really to train a passive drugs dog. And my business partner, Andy Lightfoot, who's kind of ex-military, 23-year in the RAF, dog handling instructor, he can quickly imprint a dog, a grain dog, or dual roller dog. That's not the issue. It's getting the idea pushed and getting the acceptance from the governing bodies. That's been the hard part. When we compare it to traditional methods, if you like, the knife archers and things like that, we're actually in talks with people who supply these because they can see how we could complement them in a layered approach to security. But some of the new EI tools are amazing. But the ones we have now, if you compare it in the simplest form to a knife arch, the knife arch will pick up anything metallic. Yep. The dog is able to tell the difference. So if you've just got a pocket full of coins and keys, the dog isn't going to indicate on you. So it's literally, and we've proved it, the dog will go for the person who's carrying the knife.
Gotcha. No, that makes it increases the efficiency and accuracy, which is important, especially at events when, they don't want to overly slow things down. They want people to get in easy enough and, not have the queue get too big and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I take it operationally, the design of these dogs is to work kind of in the passive screening sense, meaning they're working through crowds of people, looking, just like the typical drug dogs, bomb dogs that do the exact same things, except these are going to be your knife detection dogs. Yeah. How has, well, I guess how many dogs are now operational, or is it still kind of in a testing phase?
Where we are at the moment, we've way past proof of concept. We've had them operational and we've had results. There's only 4 dogs that we have between us that are trained up at the moment. There's no reason why we couldn't scale that up massively if the demand was there. Yeah. But it's the problem we have is getting the acceptance. Let's say I have 2 dogs, Andy has 2 dogs. So that's where we are at the moment.
Okay. Now, with the dogs that you've had and you've deployed, have you guys actually had live finds so far? Okay. So that's, like you said, obviously proof of concept is very clear. What was it like in those moments? I mean, I don't know if you were there or not, but for the handlers or the people that had these real live finds, how did it happen? How did it work? Do you have any stories related to that?
Yeah, again, we've been told not to talk about it because this is the whole kind of the way we work over here. But it's I really don't mind because I'm all about promoting this, and it's I feel as if
whatever you're comfortable with, you can share.
Yeah. So it was at the transport hub, train station actually. Everything isn't rosy and 100% successful. The first indication that I had with my dog, the first dog we put through the program, was it wrong? It was a false positive. We're still learning. We're still learning where the boundaries and the limits lie with this, and we haven't done enough operational work to establish that. But the first guy who got stopped was quite upset. Middle-aged guy. You wouldn't stereotype and think that this is a guy who's going to be carrying a knife. When we explained and spoke more with him, he actually turned out to be a sushi chef and was quite interested by it because he said that he works with knives all day, every day.
Yeah.
So was there residual odor there? We don't really know.
Yeah, it's typical dog. We have to guess a little bit, right?
Yeah. But other than that, we were picking up craft knives, kind of the folding multi-tool knives. It's a kind of broad spectrum of what the dogs were able to hit on. And other than my one, which we're not too sure about, there was no other false indications.
Is it, as you train this, what is easier for the dogs to do? Static finding of the knives or searching through the crowds of people and someone's got the knife on them? Which one seems to be the easier, more natural way for the dogs to go through it?
Because it's so similar to a passive drugs dog. If the training was right and the live venues and opportunities were there, there'd be no difference. The first dog that we run up, I don't know, I've put several videos on our Facebook page and things like that, was Bonnie the Labrador. And she's my dog, but she was basically the experiment, the experiment, the proof of concept. So lineup after lineup, loves the game. You know, I hate to say it's 100%, but it's not far off. She doesn't get it wrong. We haven't had enough exposure with her, especially to get her out there and get her in the environment. Yeah, training with people, training with coats on chairs, whichever way you want to do it. It's only a simulation of real life. It's until we get enough hours out there doing it for real, we're not going to really find out where the limits lie.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes good sense. When it comes to breeds, I mean, like you mentioned Labradors, I know over there you're obviously, to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but number 1 and number 2 are your Labradors and Spaniels. That's kind of seems to be the passive breeds, right?
Yeah.
So you guys, have you guys been using only labs? Do you guys use different breeds? How is that?
No, it's quite interesting actually, because I mean, this goes to prove that the concept works as well. But so I've got a Labrador and I've got a dual role drugs knife detection who Rotana, who's an ex police drugs dog. So we just kind of run her up on the knives to see how she would cope dual role, how he would cope dual role. Great. Yeah. Andy's 2 dogs wouldn't be the type of dogs we went out and chose for the program. The 2 little Cocker Spaniels. Yeah. Who are doing passive searches. They're absolutely amazing. But because of the height and the fact that they're jumping up on people, it's not ideal. But again, it's a research program. So
Well, that's what's interesting to me is obviously, me being a spaniel guy too, I hear a lot of people say, oh, the size. But what I've seen, obviously, and it's from your guys' country mostly, where, I mean, looking at all the passive screening narcotics dogs that are out there, finding drugs on people despite the dog's height, do you see a difference because maybe drugs smell stronger, so it's easier in this chemical? Yeah. Is there a difference that way?
Yeah, possibly, because, I mean, yourself, if you work in a drugstore, some of the time, if it's cannabis or things like that, you don't need a dog to find it. It's that strong. But I think with the smaller dogs, there's no problem. I mean, if we, again, had more time to put to the program, we could, the trained final response would just be a sit and stare rather than allowing the dogs to jump up and kind of upset people. So we're still in the early stages. I think what I'm saying is, if going forward, we'd choose the breed a bit more carefully. But we wanted to prove a point. These dogs were available. They were actually somebody's pets. And Andy trained the two up just to see how quickly the dogs would do it and see if there was a failure. So out of the 4 dogs we've tried, the 4 dogs have been successful.
Is there something, because this is a different detection dog discipline, is there something special or unique that you're looking at when selecting a dog for this type of detection? Or is it meet the same kind of things that you're looking for regardless of what detection discipline it's in?
This is where, to be honest, I'll probably get it wrong off Andy when I speak to him tomorrow, because I've got a view on this and he's got a different view. And the industry in this country's got a different view. My view personally is that if we're putting a handler in a situation where he's going to be confronting somebody with potentially carrying a knife and we don't know what the intentions are, I think the little softy Cocker Spaniels that I love and are great for other things isn't really the right dog for this. But that's just my personal view. Sure. I would want a more capable dual-role dog that would protect the handler.
Yep.
But again, that's just my view. I know and that'll not go down well in this country with the industry, because that's not the way the industry looks at it in this country. Any detection dog can't be a pointy-eared breed.
Gotcha.
It's just a different argument, but it's just my personal take on it.
Well, it's funny because it's happening over here now. We're getting, I'm now that I have a company in the contract detection dog world, many of the clients are starting to dictate more and more. They only want floppy ear dogs, no pointy ear dogs. So that's causing some changes to occur. But what I find, unique that you bring up, which is you bring up a very important, which is a discussion that we've also had within our industry. If someone's got something bad on them, firearm or explosive device, and I'll have an episode, I'm actually hoping to get it scheduled, but myself and the team from Vapor Week that do the passenger personnel screening with bombs in firearms is how do we do this in a way that highlights the target without, in some cases, increasing risk, and risk can be defined in a lot of ways. To the point, like to your specific example, okay, if my dog gets close enough to a person and they have bad intentions and they kind of know, okay, I'm caught, where will their mentality go? Are they going to go, let's fight it out now because I got no other option, or they run and flee? We won't know. But there's that question that, like you bring up, the risk there. And if the risk is to fight, not flight, well, then now I have a whole nother set of issues to deal with. And having a dog in my hand or a dog to deal with in some way can create a tactical disadvantage. Maybe it can create, to your point, with a certain type of dog, maybe I can level the playing field, but then we also have to consider, okay, is the dog going to get stabbed? And what's the public's reaction to all that? And so you're absolutely right. You're highlighting something that I think is worthy of lots of conversation.
I think so. I think as an employer, it's something we've got to consider.
That is a very important point. Yeah, actually, as a company that you employ people to do this with, it is because again, whether it's knives, guns, bombs, and we're doing the same thing, a person with bad intentions is going to go in one of two directions, the fight or the flight aspect. So we have to be prepared for either option, and how do we address it? Like what happens, our terms we use is action on find procedures. What happens?
Yeah.
You got that, right? So, this is important stuff. This is why I hope like podcasts like this start spurring on these conversations that need to be had, so that way we have we're not just winging it. Because as you're pointing out, and I think what will happen is once you've got the customer educated better about the capability of knife detection dogs, that you're going to first thing that's going to happen, there's going to be someone's going to copy you. That's just the way it always goes, right? Someone's going to copy it, and they're going to offer it cheaper than you do, and then it becomes accepted more because somebody will go for, well, let's try this out. You guys did the heavy labor, right? You've beaten the path and created this opportunity now, and soon as others see there's money in this, they will try their hand at it as well.
Yeah.
And then through both of those things happening, you creating the path and those copying it, acceptance starts to grow, because now it's not just your mouth spreading the word about this. Competitors will be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at, okay, growth is going to happen, but are we aligned on what do we do if this occurs? And that to me is kind of where the differentiator starts coming in as companies. Like if our policy or our procedures are going to be X if this occurs, and somebody else may be like, we do it like this. And that's where the rubber meets the road, and what becomes more accepted or makes the most sense for certain types of environments.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's when we talk about people copying and this, that, and the other, we've spent a lot of time with our patent attorneys and securing the IP on this, and it's control, but it's not just control because we want to have it all for ourselves. Mm-hmm. I don't want this to be diluted and put out there just by the money makers, the people who want to make a quick buck, because what will happen is it'll undermine the work that we've done to date. Because if they're not imprinted in the way that we believe is the only way that works, anybody can see it. Once it's accepted that there is such a thing as a knife detection dog, people could be throwing these dogs out, and if they're not trained right, and then the knives start getting passed and get past the security and start getting used, then that's the whole thing blown out of the water. Yeah,
it devalues the actual ability of the work that you guys did to get it started to say that this is useful. Now, is it because the part where you guys are very different than us in the United States is you guys do have national detection dog standards.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for us in the States is literally somebody down the street can go grab a dog from the pound, throw a harness on it, say it's something, and there's no real regulation. Like we talk certifications over here, but our certifications in almost all aspects are what we define as minimal standards. And even that in some cases is questionable, because for us in the United States, we haven't evolved our certification standards in 30 plus years. It's been more or less about the same with some slight variations to it. Yeah. Now, with you guys over there, you guys do, right, wrong, or indifferent, because I know there's lots of opinions about it.
Yeah.
But you do have at least a system or a checks and balance in a way in place. So as this grows, is NASDO or some of the other ones going to take on adding a knife detection piece to this?
Right. That's another thing where, to be honest, I'm definitely going to get it wrong if Andy, my partner, tomorrow. But this is another thing where I'll probably have a different view on it. There's kind of 2 or 3 organisations in this country who have the national standards. Because this is a new discipline altogether, for us to approach one of those and say, look, can we have this approved by yourself? The first thing we're going to have to do is explain how we do it.
Yes, I was going to say.
So it seems a bit counterintuitive. So I'm not ruling it out at this stage, but because it's something new, we want to set the guidelines to what we think is right for the program. So there is awarding bodies, if you like, educational establishments that can do this and work with us, and that's the route we're looking at the moment. So there will be a standard, so there'll be the same testing criteria really as any other discipline, the Odor ID and the practicals. But like I say, because it's new, it troubles me.
Tough.
It troubles me, to be honest.
Yeah. I can totally see that, because two things that have to happen. Like you said, you either have to share here's how it's done, and then they start, doing whatever. But if you don't create some kind of entry requirement, then that is also it's how the dilution begins to occur.
Yeah,
because
of course, yeah.
So it is a chicken or egg kind of thing. Like, how do we tackle this? And it's, again, like I brought up, in the States, we have so many different, literally it's probably like every couple of years there's a new organization that pops up with a new acronym for their title. And it's more or less the same standards, give or take. And what I'm going to start kicking out, and I have, this is kind of one of the first times I'm sharing this out in the open like this, is I'm calling it an ORE, Operational Readiness Examination. And what this starts off as, the handlers get a written test first. Yeah. So I need to know what you're doing. And so step one, written test. Step two, the odor recognition part. So the basic level, just like you said, dog will sniff X amount of items, say yes or no, is the target odor is present. Okay, good. Dog knows odor, handler can pass a test. Now we go to the operational. And this is where, as an evaluator for an ORE, this is where it really happens. Because as the evaluator, I'll have multiple areas to test the teams, depending on what type of work they do. So I can call a vehicle venue, a parking lot, mobile vehicles, etc., pedestrian screening, buildings, and so forth. I can do different things. But as the evaluator, I pick which areas I'm going to pick for this team to be double blind, which ones may have nothing in it, because it will somewhere in your operational exam will be a 0. Somewhere in your operational exam will be double blind.
Yeah, it's got to be. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So that's because, at this point, I've been doing it a lot of years now, and I already see that we can't, at least for us, and I know it's similar to you guys too, getting anybody to change anything is damn near impossible. Yeah. And the only way they do it is if someone dies or they get screwed out of their mind because of it. Yeah. So those are the two instigators for change. So outside of those two, the only thing that instigates change is somebody just taking the bull by the horns and saying, I'm doing it this way. I'm going to train others to do it this way. And here's now where the bar is at. Yeah. Your certifications from Snoopy's dog school and Scooby-Doo's dog, they don't mean anything. Yeah. Whatever acronym and association you belong to, that's great. You can do those, but they're nothing like this. This is on my side of the military, we called it FMPs, full mission profiles. So basically you're running an entire mission just like you would operationally. There's, again, a few caveats here and there, but you're doing it as close to mission requirements as possible, and you're evaluated on that. And this is where obviously failures really go up, because you are really testing that. And that to me is the reality that should happen. We should have. It shouldn't be this low percentage of failure, because if you look at most of the organizations that are out there, the failure rate is probably 5% or less. They hardly ever fail anybody. I want the failure rate to be where it should be, which is probably 30+% on average, failure rates, either the written tests or bad decisions on the ORE part of it, or even the odor recognition part of it.
Yeah, definitely. But I think failure is part of learning. Yes. So there's nothing, well, people don't like it, but when they've got these organizations, and it's the same with the 2 or 3 we have in this country, their perception, and I could be wrong about this, their perception is if we're getting more people through the course, then we're more successful. Well, are you getting the right people through the course? Exactly. And, where is the downside of being told, I want you to go away and work on this a little bit more and then come back in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, and we'll go through it again? I don't see the harm in that. But this is why I'm kind of not rushing towards these organizations to say, can you take us on board for our program? For the reasons we mentioned before. Yeah. Plus, I want the bar to be set higher. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about failure and things going wrong, this has been a research project from the start. And we've had very little from the industry over here in people coming and say, well, that doesn't work, this doesn't work, or whatever. And that's kind of what I've been looking for. And it's not because I'm some kind of sadist. We want to be tested. We want to be, if there's something we're missing, we want to know about it. And we want to get the dogs out there and get them operational and find the limits and find the boundaries and see how far we can push the project and find out what works and what doesn't work. And that's what it's all about for us. Yeah.
No, I mean, you kind of, what you said aligns with how my feelings are on it too, is unfortunately when you make standards harder, and I say make standards harder within associations or groups, that means that are based on membership, things like that. It's, you will frustrate people who don't pass, and they'll want to go on to where is the place I can get, all I want is this piece of paper. If I have this, like I'll give you the perfect example. Like right now, our football Super Bowl is happening this week. I've had a number of handlers reach out to me like, where can I get certified for this? And they will go anywhere, do anything just to get the piece of paper.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because the standards are so loose, for lack of a better description, they're going to get it. And if let's say I created one and they failed mine, all they're going to do is call up the next one and try to run through theirs.
Yeah.
Because our bigger issue that we both share is the clients don't give a crap. They just want, they don't know what they're looking for. They just go, oh, they say they're certified. I don't even know what certified means, but that's what they say. So I agree. I think for you guys, as we talk out loud about this, I think you're on the right track of creating a standard that you guys develop, and then maybe giving the rights to certifications to certain ones, but they have to follow what was created.
Yeah, because I think so, and I think it's the only fair way to do it because it's new, and because it's like say Andy would tell you more, tell you better about the training methodology. A lot of it is very, very similar to any other dog, but this initial imprinting, like I said before, it's for me to be happy for a dog to go out there and not for a weapon to get past them. It has to be done in the way that we've kind of worked out.
Yeah, you figured out a lot of the hard stuff.
Yeah.
So that gives you guys some input at least to say, hey, like you said, we don't know everything, but here's what we have learned. Here's what's worked. And to kind of put it all together is you guys will have your chemical. I'm assuming you kind of train your way through odor recognition phasing, as the dog can do the various lineups and so forth. Yeah. Then the next phase is going into more of an operational settings, but in a very easy way at first. Yep. Lineups of people, but small groups, and then working your way to bigger. And in that, you'll have all the things you brought up. You're going to have people with designed, whether it be coins, keys, whatever to see. And then you're going to have randomly at some point a person with a knife on them, and the dog will need to indicate on that. And equally, as we talk about, so basically, keep myself on track here. So that's the training process.
Yes.
And then at the end of that training process, you guys have been doing self-evaluations because there's nothing else at this point. So you guys create your own testing. You run your dog teams through the testing. If they meet the standard that you guys are seeing, which is the accuracy level, like they are finding it, they're not overly missing it or missing it at a certain rate, then you guys right now had to go out and sell the idea, go out here and demo this stuff and put your guys. Tell me if I'm wrong. Did you guys do it like this? You had your group of, let's say, law enforcement agencies or whatever, and you said, okay, get your group of people, take a knife. Only one of you guys have the knife, but then I'll bring the dog through. Have you guys had to do a lot of the whole stuff? Yeah.
I think, to be honest, and again, I don't know. Ask me at the time, and I would probably have a different answer because I was the guinea pig, to be honest, on a lot of it, myself and Bonnie. And I've never professed to be a trainer or the best handler, or Bonnie is not the best dog. But it was a research project, and we've got to jump through the hoops, and people put us to the test. Everything was double blind, everything. The Odor ID lineup, the dog smashed it, no problem. And then the scientific body done a ad hoc test on the deer, which we knew nothing about. And we went along with it. And luckily the dog, that one, it was... so we were doing the Odor ID lineup. great. Coins, keys. They brought along some of their own keys, obviously coins, and brought a couple of little pen knives and things. The dogs were going through that, absolutely no problem. We were in a kind of a factory setting with lots of metalwork, iron stock lying around. So while I was out the room and setting up for a double blind, they come up with the idea of hiding a knife in a steel tube, in a steel kind of box section with a slit along it, around 3 or 4 meters long, with the slit facing down over towards the carpet. So they hid a key and a coin in that. And, you know, this is true. This is people who you will know in the scientific world in the UK. So we can talk, I can let you know off camera who that is. But yeah, so they've done that. I walked up it with the dog the first time and asked it to search it, and the dog was looking at me as if to say, "We've never done this before. What do you want?" And the second time, it was nose on, pinpointed where the knife was, in a steel tube with a coin at the other end.
Nice.
So, and you know that blew. You know, that was the end of the testing for that day. That we've seen enough. Kind of that's it, and that blew our minds. But this is the thing where we aren't teaching the dogs are teaching us all the time.
Yeah.
How the hell have done that? I've got no idea at all.
Well, you bring up an important point. You know, that's the other part that happens with, you know, with the big rumble in the United States is what we call the ORT or the ATF's National Order Recognition Test. Everybody, you know, complains about the various aspects of it. And because at first there's a high failure rate, and it comes down to what you just said a second ago, a lot of the dogs, it's the first time they've seen something like that. They've never done the lineup like that. They've never. So it's not that the dog is failing because it doesn't know the odor. The dog doesn't understand what the heck am I doing?
It's communication, isn't it?
Yeah. So you went through the same thing. You saw, like, you and your dog got to go to a test that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
So it probably took a second or two for the dog to go, oh, this is what you want me to do, or this is what you want me to sniff. And then now I know what it is. And then now, okay, this is here or not here kind of thing. So
yeah,
I can
definitely.
imagine how nerve-wracking it's got to be. I mean, talk about that a little bit. Is, man, you know, handlers, we all, like, when you say the word certification, or you say what we all like pucker like this, and we all have, you know, but you've had to do that like a lot. It isn't because you're proving a new concept. So everybody and their brother wants to test it and do their like, I want to control the test. I want to see. So what's that like to have to put yourself constantly under the microscope?
Interesting, stressful at the time, and the dogs can no doubt pick up on my stress. When Andy's doing the test, he handles it a lot better. He's been doing it a lot longer than I have. But it goes back to what we touched on before as well, in that if there is something that's not going to work, I want to know about it. Yeah. One, I may be able to go away and work on it and find a workaround for it, or that might be the limit. So yeah, if somebody comes up with a new idea or a new way of doing something, I'm all for it. You know, especially probably in the first year, I was waiting for someone to turn around and say, "Well, have you thought about this?" And actually, it doesn't work. You know, but I'm thinking, you know, because the dogs were smashing it. Yeah,
no, it's super interesting. Like at first face value, when I saw it too, I was like, because the questions I started with, like, okay, I can understand the concept, but how does it not alert to the spoons, the forks, all the things that, like I said in the beginning, and now that I have a better understanding that there's a difference between, you know, our chemical reaction to this thing as opposed to this thing. That's like mind blowing, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
because like I can get keys and coins, but if I have a silverware set, and the knife and the fork and the spoon are all made by the same company, all the same thing, but all I did was take that dinner knife and sharpened it better. And but I think what you also kind of highlighted too is we are still going to have some cases of false positive.
Yeah.
But we'd rather have that than a complete miss.
Yeah.
And it's information gathering. Like I said, it turns out maybe like the scenario just described is true. The manufacturers that make forks, knives, and spoons, maybe that's a little bit harder for a dog to discriminate against. But usually there's nobody walking around with a spoon in their pocket too often, right?
Well, yeah, if you put things into context about the venue you're searching or whatever. So some of the examples where the dogs have missed. But again, I don't class it as a miss, but it's all education for us. So cutlery, the plated spoons and things, the dogs won't hit on.
Okay.
It will be the something with a ground edge.
Yep.
But if you put that into context, how many people are going to use your knife and fork as a weapon? I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but if they're going out to do bad intent, are they going to go to the cutlery drawer and take a knife out? Probably not. I don't know. Yeah. And some of the other things, some of the things where the dogs have hit on is the likes of screwdrivers. But our thinking there is it's got a sharpened edge, it's got a ground edge. And we believe that's the difference, and that's where the dog is hitting on. And if you put that in the context, are you going to say to the dog, "Well, you're wrong"? Because I don't think you are. No. And again, if this was going into a football match or a rock concert or whatever, why are you taking a screwdriver in there? It would still be a cause for me if I was doing a search. Just why are you doing that?
Sure. Yeah.
So
unless they're a handyman or something, but at that point we know who they are. They should be on a manifest. They should be all these things that are, at least make it more understandable why that individual would. But you're right. 9 out of 10 people that are doing that aren't bringing the screwdriver into like, oh, I just needed to fix something, so I had it with me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting tests that we had when some guy came down to put us to the test, he basically brought the contents of his grandfather's shed in a bag, and he wasn't a dog guy. He didn't really know what he was looking for, but he was high up in an agency who works for the government, shall we say, and he said, "Can I put these out for the dog?" He said, "Yeah, well, we can, but we haven't." One of them was a hammer, so he put a hammer out and said, and the dog indicated on it. It's looked a little confused, different change in behaviour, and then it indicated. So he kind of put that as a negative, and I'm thinking, well, we haven't trained the dog on that before. The dog's probably a little bit confused, but it's got the similarity there. And amongst the other bags that are out there, that's the only one that's kind of out of context. But he couldn't tell me whether he wanted that as a positive or a negative. And I'm thinking, if you can't tell me what you expected from the experiment, then where's the learning curve in that? How do we benefit from that?
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, I would want to kind of know if someone's bringing a hammer into some of these events too, just because the claw and depending on the hammer you're using, obviously the claw on some hammers are going to have that serrated edge to it or that ground down edge.
Yeah. So again, I don't think the dog was wrong.
No,
but he looked at it and said, "Well, it's not a knife, so why is the dog hitting it?" Yeah, and I'm thinking, the dogs are amazing to us, but we're not saying they're perfect. And again, you put it into context.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part, I think. At the end of this whole thing, this conversation here is because it's new, people don't understand it, but yet, even though they don't understand it, they expect perfection.
Yeah.
So which is the irony.
Yeah, and everyone's got an opinion.
Of course. Even though, again, we don't know much about it, but we are full of opinions for it, for sure.
Yeah.
Just as we both know, put that on social media and watch all the, I'm sure you've dealt with everybody coming out of the woodwork with opinions on it. I had just shared that, for the most part, I'm getting off social media other than things I'm doing for the training aspect. We have our private group and I still have to use social media for promoting some things here and there, but I'm no longer going to, get into it because of the training discussions, because no longer is social media a platform for, unfortunately, good discussion. Everything needs to come back to what it used to be, which is we have to be in person, doing what you're doing with this whole new idea, getting out there in front of people, showing it, answering the questions. That's way easier to do than try to do it through a computer screen and a keyboard, because I think this is because it's so new. And again, your point being, there's so much we don't know that you can't have a really good logical conversation if it's through a keyboard and a computer screen. there needs to be eyes on, seeing it, discussing it, and being way more immersed in it.
Yeah, definitely. I think amongst social media, there's definitely a pack mentality, and there's kind of because Joe Bloggs, my trainer, said that this doesn't work and it'll never get off the ground. So everyone who trains with him believes the same. It's where's the open mind and the free thinking, and let's listen to the facts and take it from there and make our own considered opinion on it. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
No, not anymore. No. Well, the best part is you're doing the good work. You're now out there. You're able to go through and do the demonstrations. And I agree with you. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time to educate the consumer market on the value of this. It'll probably be a slow uphill battle, at least for a little while, because again, anything new is always harder to get people to get behind. But the results speak for themselves, and the more that you guys get opportunities, I think that's going to really what's going to be the game changer. Yeah,
I think that's definitely what we're looking for now. We're looking for people to partner with so that we can get the opportunities and get out there, because it's not, like I said before, you can do simulations all week long, week after week, but it's not the same as getting out there. And it's not as if we can go out there without the support of the venue owners or without the support of the police and start challenging people who we believe are carrying a knife. It's just, it needs to be in conjunction with the owners of the venues or with the police. Mm-hmm. And we have done both, but not in enough quantity.
Yeah. I think that'll happen with time, and as the word gets out more and more about it. Obviously, I'll definitely be sharing this because I find it utterly fascinating, and I think it's really good work that you guys have done. And obviously, with Dr. Tiedmann and Texas Tech and how they've really kind of validated a lot of things that you guys see and gave additional information for you guys to get even better.
Yeah. They've been amazing from day one, Texas Tech and Dr. Paola. It's brilliant. It's. I think we without a doubt, we definitely would have given up by now without their support.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, because again, uncharted territory. We don't know what we're right or we're wrong. We do need that scientific community. This is a great example of where the dog world really needed scientific community to work with us. It couldn't be the way of the old days where us dog trainers just said it works because.
That's it. We've between us, we've pulled together a brilliant team, and I'm not saying that, and I'm not including myself in it, but, we've got Andy, who's the lead trainer, we've got Paola in Texas Tech, we've got people who are doing the IP and the patent attorneys and finance people and project managers, and we're all giving our time and effort for nothing at this stage. It's all self-funded, but we believe in it. We believe in the cause. We speak quite regularly to victims' parents, young kids who've lost their lives because of this. And like I said, we've never professed to be the ultimate or the only thing that's going to solve knife crime. But we do believe we're another tool in the box that could be used to reduce the numbers of deaths amongst young people. So we'll keep pushing on with it.
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for your time and getting on here and explaining this. This is, like I said, for me, very, very fascinating. I'm sure for many of the viewers and listeners, they'll find it fascinating as well. Obviously, are you good in the show notes if I share like your email for those that do have interest or have more questions?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be in the show notes, how to get a hold of you. Obviously, people can find you on social media. Obviously, we connected on LinkedIn. That was where I know you do lots of your work at.
Yeah.
But everybody, this is something I feel this is just indicative of our detection dog community. We're not limited by anything other than our imagination, and the dogs are extremely amazing at what they can do.
Exactly, yeah.
And you've definitely done some work there to help prove that point even stronger. So again, thank you for doing this, and thank you for sharing what's going on. And I have a feeling this will not be the last time we do a podcast. I'm sure we will connect again at some point, especially as this takes off, or even the industry gets more questions about it. I think this is a great topic and something that we should definitely keep talking about.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, Cameron. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to K9s Talking Sense, where it's okay to be nosy.